Hello there, Steve here in Sydney. I'm just here going to talk to you about psychic phenomena in people's everyday life. Much ado is made about it in scientific circles and skeptics screaming for proof and evidence, blah blah blah. But in your daily life it has survival value and it pops up in unexpected ways. The way that women collect jewellery, it's just one of the things they do. Men often collect tools, that's their preoccupation. They enjoy looking at tools, picking them up, playing around with them, collecting them. That's why you have these man caves, man sheds they talk about, the garage at home, you see. Psychic phenomena I notice in myself, and it's been going on most of my life, is that I will suddenly get popping into my head an urgent desire to buy a tool, you see. And what I do is, when it pops up like that, I often counter it with, what the hell would I do with it? It's no use buying tools I can't use. I've got no use of it. Especially specialised tools, and which you only use infrequently and cost good money. So why does the idea pop into your head? So sometimes I yield to this thing that just pops into your head and you just go, okay, I'll rock out and find one. So you rock out at the hardware store and you do find the tool, and you go, well, it's nice, it's affordable, it's cheap, it's made in China, and I can have this because it's not going to do cause me any problems or anything, and then you go, I still haven't got a use for it, but it's only $9, so it's okay, right? 4 days later, something breaks on the house or the car, which you could not have known, and you already have the tool for it, okay? That's the tool you were signalled. So it really shows that we've all got part of our mind in the future, okay? So we don't live entirely in the present like everyone tells us we do. We've all got a little bit of the future streaming into our awareness, and it gives us little messages and warnings such as that. Now, I've been doing that all of my life since I could start buying tools when I was 16. So that's a small example of psychic phenomena in the life of the average day person, and it's obviously installed there by evolution. It has survival value, so I've got no problems with that. It's been part of me all of my life. A similar thing happened in the 1990s when my wife and I were running a jewellery business, and we would have between 800 and 1,000 pieces of jewellery in a glass display cabinet. And it was in a market actually, and my wife would be sitting there in the sun and dozing in the sun, no customers, what's going on, and we're irritated, and we got up so early that morning, 4 a.m, and my wife would suddenly get up out of her chair, reach into the cabinet, and from the far corner pick up one piece of jewellery, and she'd vigorously polish it, and I would say, with a little bit of curiosity, why did you pick that jewellery up and just polish it? What'd you do that for? You know, there's 900 things to pick from, but you chose that particular thing. And she would just mumble something about Mrs. Muscara, you see. So I'd go, oh right, okay, right, not having a clue what's going on. Then 30 minutes later, Mrs. Muscara would turn up. She'd stare at the cabinet for a few minutes and point to that item in the corner that had been polished, and she'd say, I want to buy that, what's your best price? And she would buy it, and we would make money out of that piece that had just been polished some 30 minutes earlier. Now that's repeated with my wife doing that probably more than 1,000 times over about an 8-year period selling jewellery. So I noticed that, and I happily accept that, because it's very much similar to my buying tools in advance of something breaking down requiring repair. But that's just 2 examples of psychic phenomena in people's everyday lives, which we all take in our stride. And a similar thing, of course, which I often talk about, is telephone telepathy, where you get a fleeting image of another person landing in your mind's eye, and you weren't thinking of that person, your thought train was elsewhere, and the person lands in your mind's eye, a nice portrait picture or something, and 20 seconds later the phone rings and it's them, you see. So that's another example of how connected we really all are. Our intentions to do things with each other is telegraphed somehow outside the mechanical world we live in, the materialist world we live in. There's other connections between people, very evident and obvious. We've never had a problem with that in this family because it's part of our daily life. That's been proven, the telephone telepathy, in large call centre studies involving hundreds of people. So it's clearly happening, and it's the most common form of telepathy, that is telephone telepathy. Now, there's another example of, I walked into a shop and I saw something very handy that I thought would be very useful, a rechargeable low-price torch. Made in China, but I was instantly suspicious because it's had an American plug on it, a wall socket plug for charging, and you had to buy a little $2 adapter to make it work on the Australian main supply. Problem being that Americans use 110 volts and we have 240 volts. We use the European system. Now, I knew for sure that if you plug it into 240 volts, it's likely to blow up and burn, fail, right? I instantly thought also that it's most likely exported to the wrong country, that these torches were meant to go to America, you see, and they just sent it to the wrong country and they're selling them off in this cheap $2 shop. So I talked to the assistant for about 10-15 minutes, telling her all the concerns I had, that this torch is clearly made for America and wouldn't work in Australia. And she said, well, that's okay, and it is, it's right to feel that way, but she says, I've got two of them working here, plugged into the mains here, look. And she showed me a couple of them working. And I was still deeply suspicious. So I went and got another one out of a box, and I said, plug that one in for me, would you? Because I don't trust small business people at all, and shopkeepers, never trust them. And she plugged it in for 5 minutes while we were talking, and the lamp I had selected, she switched it on and it glowed. It worked, you see. This type of Chinese, cheap, tacky Chinese lantern, you see. And it worked. And I was, well, it must be okay. Maybe it's got a voltage sensing circuit, that sort of thing, and it doesn't care whether it's 240 or 110 volts, you see. So my suspicions are laid, which had been very deep, very sceptical indeed I was, that this thing is going to work for me. So guess what happened? I went to the shelf and picked up another unit at random in the box, fully sealed with sellotape, never opened by another person. Despite all my misgivings, I did this. I've been shown that these were ACE, obviously working in Australia. So I took it home, plugged it in to the wall socket, and guess what happened? The unit burned internally with a disgusting burning plastic smell, and it never lit up for me. This torch never lit up for me. What do we call this? It's called a presentiment. It's really confirmation that I'm psychic, that's all. Mildly psychic. I had a presentiment, a feeling that I couldn't really justify. I didn't know why I was so deeply suspicious, but I voiced all my suspicions to the shopkeeper. And she showed me, yes, of course they do work, and I took the one that I chose randomly, brand new in the packet, took it home, plugged it in, and it burned internally with this very offensive plastic odour. So that's another little physical example of what they call a presentiment, a foreboding, you see. This is very common in people. It motivates people more than you think. It can stop them making decisions, stop them going places, such as occurred with the Titanic in 1912. Many people had presentiments and threw their tickets away or gave them to somebody else or avoided going for reasons they didn't really know. That some of them had precognitive dreams, but many of them just had these presentiments, you see. It's recorded by many, many people. Now, there's 100 books on the Titanic and numerous exciting movies. I'm sure we've all seen Titanic. Why would people keep writing books about it? Well, Michael Tim, who is an author who lives in Hawaii, has written a book about the Titanic with a focus on something you have never thought about. The fact that a famous medium, a man who could do automatic writing, a famous British journalist, William Stead, died. He went down with the Titanic. He was hit by the funnel. One funnel, when it fell, killed him. Just another person on the casualty list, you say. Well, so what? We've all read about the sinking of the Titanic. It's a nice show, blah, blah, blah. 3 days later, William Stead made contact with a medium in New York. His first transmission to her was weak and garbled, but she did know him. They had been friends before. In the next ensuing days, William Stead made contact with her more and more and clarified the connection. It's the most fascinating book to read. It's a short book, but it talks about the fact that over a period of 10 years, William Stead, the famous British journalist and a medium, made contact with a number of mediums in England and America for some 10 years after the 1912, his 1912 death. William Stead provided so much evidence that he convinced his own family that this was the real McCoy, the real voice talking through the mediums. And later on he did something spectacular, which is very rare, but it still happens today. He was this medium he was appearing through, one of them was a physical medium, where ectoplasm exudes from the person's immune system and forms a physical appearance of something that people can see. And this is called physical mediumship. It's practiced today by about 6 people in the world. It's extremely rare. It was more prevalent in those early Victorian times. But William Stead, the British journalist and medium, after he died on the Titanic, made physical appearances in seances. It's a damn good read, and he even talks about what it's like to die on the Titanic with other people who don't have a clue what's happening to them. That's in the end of the book. There's a listing of what he learns, and he relates what he learns, that there's no such thing as death. It's a myth. It's just a transformation, you see. So I commend the book to you. It's a Kindle Reader download. It costs about $7, and you can get a free peek. There's a summary of the book, and it's a damn good summary, a generous summary, practically a giveaway of the book, on Michael Tim's website. And I'll give you the link below this video. But it certainly makes you think, and really, it's really an affirmation. There's so much evidence provided there by a number of people, a number of mediums, that it's really evidence of life after death, well and truly established. And in a personal way, I've also seen this in my own life. I have a friend in South Carolina. She runs a store, a business. She's in her 20s. She was Gnostic. In her late 20s, she caught adult measles, nearly died from a raging temperature, and had a near-death experience as a result. She nearly died, and she's recovering. About a week, fortnight later, she discovers all these howling voices in her head, and they're dead people. And they're talking to her, and they're very violent and nasty and cruel obscenities yelled and screamed at her, you see. And you go, what the hell's going on here? How could this happen? Well, she noticed it happened mostly when she walked near the town cemetery. So she stopped going to that end of town.